Welcome to the podcast. I'm Rosa Coelho, your host, lifestyle entrepreneur, health coach, and speaker. I've gone from being in complete overwhelm, burning the candle at both ends, and watching my health, relationships, and business suffer, to creating a life with more joy, ease, and abundance. If you're ready to let go of the overwhelm, reclaim your health, and push past your comfort zone so that you can unleash your next level of success to create a greater impact, then sit back as we delve into conversations, as well as bring on guests to share with you tools, knowledge, and real action steps to get you there. Listen in, because you never know when you may hear something that changes everything. Hello, beautiful friend. Welcome to another episode this week. Today, I'm talking all about, is intuitive eating possible? And this is such an interesting topic because this is a word, this whole idea of intuitive eating has become really big in the last few years. And I used to think, like, what the heck does that mean? Like, my intuitive eating compared to someone else's intuitive eating is so different because it depends on so many different factors. Our background, our work, our social, our social circles, how we've been raised to eat, to prepare food. Like, there's just so many factors that would make this idea of intuitive eating so different. And I just thought, like, I just don't know. I don't know that I get it. And I was like, is it the same as instinctive? And I was like, I don't know. When I think instinct, I think like, you're not thinking about it. You're just doing it. It's a quick reaction. And so that didn't feel like that was intuitive eating. And I was just like, oh, I don't know. I kind of don't buy into it because I had all these health, I would listen to these like health coaches talking about, let go of the diet culture, just focus on intuitive eating. And I was like, but how do you do that? Like, if you have no base and yet you have a goal, you want to feel healthy, you want to feel fit, you want to feel good. Maybe you want to lose a bit of stubborn weight or excess pounds that are just making you not feel like yourself. And you know what? I think like anything, we always go so far the other way. Like, I am not pro diet culture. I'm not pro people starving themselves to look a certain way. But then there's this side of, is it okay to want to shift some weight? Can you truly love who you are in this moment, but still want to better yourselves? And I just thought, yes, like absolutely. And we're kind of gone to the point where we shame people as well because they want to lose that extra weight. We say things like, you should just be happy as you are, or you're beautiful as you are. And where that might be true, what the person often wants when they lose that weight is that it's more that feeling, like that feeling of energy and vitality and just feeling like their truest self. And so I'm in support of that. And I've been there where I've put on excess weight because of stress and just life happens and situations and illnesses can happen. And we put on this weight and we're like, oh, I just don't feel like myself. And, and that's that I'm in support of. And that's what I love helping women to do. It's not just shift the weight, but become stronger, fitter, more energized, understand what really fuels their body and helps it to really function optimally. So I was listening to this podcast this week, which really kind of made this clear for me. And whether these guys were correct in their definition of or defining of it, I'm on board with this and I liked it. So I was listening to the Mind Pump podcast, which is like a fitness podcast. It's like these three guys sitting around talking about fitness. They're super knowledgeable. And I don't know if I find the podcast super interesting, and I always pick up a few things in there that I really, really like, or that it affirms maybe something that I'm doing, or it opens my mind to something different. And so I really appreciate that podcast. But they were talking about intuitive eating, and one of the guys, and I'm terrible at knowing their names because, I'm just listening to them, although they are on YouTube too, but I mostly just listen. And so they were talking about, the one guy especially was talking about what exactly is intuitive eating. And he said, it's when you actually finally you take the time to learn about food, what it does for you, how you feel, and you go through that process of tracking, understanding, and from there you can then start to make decisions, like conscious decisions, based on your knowledge and your understanding and your experience. Now that I liked. So it means that, if you're going to eat this kind of food, it's going to make you feel this way. And then you're going to make a conscious decision. You might think, okay, I'm in a social setting right now. This comes around once a year. I really want to fully enjoy it and experience it guilt-free. I'm going to have this thing, even though I know it's not helping me towards my goals, but in this moment, it's perfect. And other times you might make the exact opposite decision. You might be like, right now, this goal for me is really important. This feeling really good and energized. And I know if I eat this, it's going to make me feel this way later. So I'm going to make a different choice. And whichever way you decide to go, it's going to be a guilt-free way, but you understand it and you're fully conscious. So this is what I love. I just love that. I think that made total perfect sense to me. And I feel like I'm a very intuitive eater by this definition now, after years of experience, but also now, after in this season of my life and where I was a few months ago wanting to shift this weight, I was more in the tracking and understanding phase and enjoying that and not feeling restricted by it at all. So I'm going to take you through 4 different phases of, the process that I feel like understanding these 4 phases can then take you to this point of being able to say, okay, now I'm in this intuitive eating phase and it feels great. But how do you get to that intuition? How do you develop this intuition afterwards? And, there's as an example, let's say, I don't know, I'm just kind of pulling this out and thinking out loud. Say you take a first aid course, or say you don't take a first aid course. You see someone that's injured and you rush over to help and you're like, I have no clue what to do. Then you take the first aid course. You see someone injured and you're like, okay, what was that course? What did I learn in that part for this injury? Okay, from what I remember, I could do this, this, and this. And you're kind of really thinking about what you need to do. You're thinking back to what you've learned to apply it. Okay. Then let's say now you've faced that experience 4 or 5 times where people have been injured. And now you're like, okay, you just go into that kind of automatic mode. You're not even thinking about it. You're like, I know exactly what to do. You've developed that skill, but it's come from first learning, then the repetitiveness of it, the experience of the situation, to then being able to do it intuitively without really having to think about each single step. So I hope that helps. And that's what I feel is really powerful in how you can develop intuitive eating. I don't believe it's something that we just have. Instinctive is I'm starving. I need to survive. I'm going to do anything to survive and I'm going to eat whatever it is to survive. But we're really talking about developing that intuitive eating. So I am full for this. I think it's incredible. So the first process I would say is immersing yourself into the learning process. We have to first learn in order to be able to apply and then to do. So what do I mean by learning process? For learning about food, I love tracking. I really, truly love tracking, not as a form of feeling guilty for what we do, but a fully understanding our food. I was having a conversation with someone the other day and they said, oh my goodness, I had no idea how high of a carbohydrate diet I had and I was eating. And I thought that was really cool because it wasn't felt or said with guilt. It was really just an awakening, oh my goodness, I really didn't understand truly what carbohydrates were and how many I was having. And so through tracking, they were able to truly see that. And tracking is brilliant. I love, there's an app called Carb Manager. It's my favorite. There's also FitnessPal. There's quite a few out there. Carb Manager for me has always just been super simple. A lot of these apps allow you to scan food in. And, at the beginning, it's a pain. The first few days, you're going to be like, oh, I hate tracking, because you literally need to track everything. If you make a salad, you make whatever you're making for food. I don't know why I always throw salads out there. And don't get me wrong, I don't eat rabbit food. My salads are hearty meals, but you really need to track every single thing that you put in there. So what happens with the app is we tend to eat very similar foods throughout our week. the more you do it, the quicker it gets because it saves your most common foods. And so you get really fast at it. So hang in there if you're just learning it and just starting that tracking process. Know that it won't feel like that all the time. You're also not going to do it forever. You might do it for a few weeks. You might do it for a month. You might do it for 6 weeks. Really depends on kind of your starting point of what you already understand in terms of being able to track and understanding the values of foods. So on top of the tracking, it's also understanding how much do you want to get, like what is your goal. I love in terms of carbs, I don't do keto. I've done keto before, and I think it's as a temporary or a short-term thing could be very beneficial for many people. I don't keto. I like to follow the Primal Diet carb curve, and really for like a slow, healthy weight loss, you want to be between 100 and 150 of total carbs. And then what I do on top of that is I say to myself, okay, this is a day where perhaps I just went walking. It wasn't my strength workout day or intervals or anything like that, then I will keep my carbohydrates closer to the 100. If it's a day where I'm like, oh gosh, like I am, it's a strength training day or a big hike day or whatever, then I will be closer to that 150 mark. So that's how I decide where I work within those ranges. Now, protein, I always aim to get minimum of 100 grams of protein, but ideally what you want to be doing is aiming for 1 gram per ideal body weight. So I work to aim to get my protein anywhere between 135 and 140 grams. That works really well for me. And I know some people are like, wow, I'm freaking out. Look, if you're at 30 grams right now, aim to double that first and then aim to get the 100 and then build from there. But it really doesn't take a whole lot. Like a piece of chicken is 25 to 30 grams, depending, on the size. I like to have a whey protein shake, making sure it's very high quality whey. That will give me a 25 to 27 grams. And so you can see how just being conscious of protein at each meal, that builds up rather quickly. So it's not difficult to get that amount of protein in. But as we age, so for my ladies in perimenopause and menopause, as we age, we utilize protein less. So it's really important to meet those protein targets if putting on that lean muscle mass is a goal, which I always make it a goal for all my clients. We really focus on being muscle centric, like really focusing on building that muscle as opposed to really focusing on the weight loss and fat loss. The fat loss comes, but I just love this approach. It's just like mentally a healthier approach. And then from there, calories, tracking your calories. And at the end of the day, when it comes to your calorie count, you want to be in a slight deficit of like maybe 100 to 150 calories. This isn't about starvation. There's all sorts of calorie counters online that you can Google, but I aim to keep mine around 1600. Again, it depends on my activity level for the day, so I don't panic if I go over that. What I don't like to do is to keep my calories too low. Like if we're on a 1300 calorie daily intake, unless you're a super tiny person, like that is just not enough. It will stress your body, stress your adrenals, impact your hormones. Like there's all these implications beyond just calories in, calories out. And that's why I don't do a huge focus on calories, but it gives me my ratios when I'm calculating for the day, what I'm eating, like how many, the protein, and the carbohydrate count. So this might sound complicated. Keep it simple. First, start with tracking your protein as number one, then start to look at the carbohydrates and build on from there. So don't get overwhelmed. So that's number one, is this learning process. Enjoy the tracking. Just say, I'm just learning about this food. This has nothing to do with being guilty. Sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. Number two is learning how to nourish your body. So looking at food as opposed to, okay, I need to eat because I'm hungry and I want to fill my stomach. Thinking, okay, I am in this phase of really wanting to create energy and vitality and eating things that are going to make my brain super healthy. Brain health is so important. And what can I do to build this muscle? What are the kind of foods I need to eat? We're looking at really great quality sources of your proteins. getting in those nutrient dense fruits and veggies, getting in fermented foods, all of those kind of things. Like, what are the real foods that I need to get into my body, as opposed to those empty calories, like the processed foods, the high flour, high sugary foods. So starting to look at that, as opposed to, it's time to eat, I need to eat, what should I eat? But no, like, okay, it's time to eat. I have this opportunity to nourish every cell in my body. What choices am I going to make? And choices that are going to make me feel alive and happy. Number 3, I would say, is connecting. So once we've learned we're looking at nourishing our bodies, the number 3 is connecting how we feel after certain meals, being reflective about the eating process. So often we eat and then that's it. Like, we're kind of in busy mode, on to the next thing, not thinking about anything. But take a moment and just ask yourself, did that meal just make me feel full and satisfied? Yes or no? If yes, what did I eat that made me feel this good? Because now you're going to have like that memory stamp of it, and you can go back to that meal. Number 2, if the answer was no, ask yourself, usually the question is, did I eat enough protein? Did I have some healthy fats in there to make me feel satisfied? Those 2 things are going to make me feel the most satisfied. Was my meal low in those things and higher and too high in simply carbohydrates, and now I'm actually crashing and feeling tired rather than energized? And so again, this is awesome because it's just information for you. So if that meal didn't make you feel good, make note of that. And you're like, okay, how could I have improved that meal? What could I have added to it? And so it becomes a lot less about being judgmental as it does about learning and growing from that. So the other question is, do I feel bloated? And if I feel bloated, what is it? Was there wheat and gluten in there? Was it dairy? And I'm actually a fan of high quality dairy, but it agrees with some people better than others. And so you need to listen to your body and ask yourself what was in there. And top allergens are wheat, gluten, dairy, eggs. For some people, I love eggs. A lot of these allergens, like, sometimes you could have these allergens towards eggs or dairy. And then once your gut has healed, you can actually go back to them. Eggs are a very nutrient dense food. So I totally, absolutely love them. But like I said, for some people, they can be an allergen. Are you having things like soy or oat milk or almond milks and things with like additives? Like, we think that they're healthy foods, but then, marketing, I always say, ruins everything. So that oat milk or those almond milk that you think is just almonds, when you read the back, is full of all sorts of additives. So ask yourself, could it be one of the additives in there? And we often don't go to that, but it definitely could be. So perhaps you had a shake and you felt bloated. Rather than blaming it on that ingredients in the shake per se, the ones that you see, think about that oat milk or that almond milk, and next time make it with just water and see if that makes a difference. So you're truly just experimenting. We're all so different, and we also change throughout different phases of life as well, or we become less allergic to things once we remove them and our gut health improves and we can add things back in. So experiment and just be aware and connect to how you feel with foods that you're having, and know that this is a forever evolving thing. I'm forever evolving with this too, because again, our bodies change. Okay. Number 4 is, Number 4 is asking yourself, was I hungry? So are you eating just because we've been programmed to eat at 6 p.m. or our work tells us we need to eat at 12? Like, some of these things we are not conscious of, but often if it's like 6 p.m., for example, I'm not a big dinner eater. I don't skip breakfast often, although skipping breakfast is okay too. It's really about listening to your body, but making sure you get those nutrients in. So it's not about skipping meals to save on calories. You're still going to eat throughout the day, but you're going to eat at times that make sense to you. So for example, like I said, dinner for me isn't a big one. I always have like a great shake for breakfast. I always have like lunch is probably my biggest meal of the day. It's the time that I'm the hungriest, so I eat well at that time. And then at dinner, I really eat just a little bit of food. I'll have like my protein. I'll make sure that I get my protein in. That's number 1 for me. I'll look to see where my carb count is. Should I have a little bit more carbs, or am I kind of good for the day? And that's how I decide on my dinner. But if I'm not hungry, it's rare that I'm not hungry at all, so I'll have something small. but it's rare that that's my biggest meal. So you might be different. So just start to ask yourself, like, why am I eating right now? Is it because I've been told that this is the time that I eat, or is it because I'm actually hungry? I know I had someone say to me, oh, whenever I get home from work, it's like 4 o'clock. It's too early to eat, but I'm starving. And I'm like, just eat your dinner. Like, eat your dinner at 4 o'clock. If you're hungry, if you're starving at that time, like, why wait 2 hours to eat? Now, if you have family or a partner and you like to eat meals together, perhaps you eat your meal when you get home and then you save some of it and have it a little bit later to have with your partner. Like, there's always ways around these things. So that's the last question I would say. So learning process and tracking, learning how to nourish your body, connecting to how you feel after meals, and asking yourself, am I hungry? Like, why am I actually eating right now? From there, you can then start to make those conscious decisions. So, and after a few weeks of doing this, you can start to ask yourself, for example, say you're out with family and friends and there's some foods at the party and you say to yourself, I actually crave eating that right now. I know how it's going to make me feel after, which isn't super great. But in this moment, I'm going to be okay with it. I'm actually just going to enjoy this. I'm going to feel guilt-free. It's one meal in my day and I've done really well all day. I'm going to have this. And I love that because that's how this becomes non-restrictive. Now, if you're early on in the process and you're like, you know what, I know if I eat that, I won't be able to stop. It's going to trigger cravings. It's going to trigger all this stuff. I'm going to leave it because I don't want to feel like that after. And how you feel in that moment, you may be in that same situation 2-3 weeks later. And those feelings, those cravings, like I don't get cravings, and people find that really difficult to believe, but I don't. There was a time where I did, and there's still times where, throughout the year, maybe things are stressful or I've gotten off track and started eating things I shouldn't. I find those cravings will come back, but then I know how to get rid of them. So I haven't had cravings in months and months. I just don't. I don't crave sweet things. I don't crave salty. I don't crave anything. But that's what happens when we go through this process of nourishing our body, understanding our food, giving it what it needs, not feeling guilty when we make choices. So it's a process, but you can get there. And I know that when you're really, when those cravings hit, and if you're someone that's plagued by cravings all the time, it's hard to believe that you can get to a point where you don't have them. But I'm here to tell you, you absolutely 100% can. And it's a great sign when you get there. So another question too is, like, eating can also be very emotional. Emotional eating is definitely a thing. I believe that a lot of people feel they're emotional eaters when in fact, often it's cravings are being triggered by being kind of on a blood sugar roller coaster from the high carbohydrate diet. So when you control that and regulate that, your hormones also become regulated, which means your emotions become more balanced, and you may find that actually you weren't an emotional eater after you just weren't an emotional eater. And so that has happened with clients of mine. However, not to disregard that emotional eating is definitely a thing. I just think that many people think that they are, and they're actually not. Now, if you are an emotional eater, that's where all of this process can be very helpful too, because you can start to ask yourself in those scenarios, like, am I eating because I'm hungry, or did someone just say something and I've been triggered? And is this a pattern? And how do I feel after I eat this food because I was triggered? And start to be aware of it. And often that awareness is key, because the thing with emotional eating is we're often just eating those foods mindlessly, because we're not making that connection, at least not in that moment, because we are in an emotionally charged moment. So I am no expert around emotional eating. I have worked with clients where we have broken through with this and it's really worked for them, and it's come through this process of understanding foods, understanding their environment, understanding their triggers. And we've worked one-to-one on that, and I've gotten to know them super well. And so I've been able to coach them through that. So I just want to say that if you are truly an emotional eater, you feel like your hormones are well balanced, you know what you're doing and with the food, and you've learned that process and you're still doing it, then there are programs out there that can really, truly help. There's experts online, and there's one girl, Samantha Skelly, that does great work around this. I think her site is called Hungry for Happiness, something like that. So there is definitely help out there. I believe that if you're not doing the 4 things that we talked about at the start of this podcast, that's a great place to start, and then kind of take that next step as well. So my friends, I hope that this episode has helped you in some way. You know that I absolutely just love helping women to feel their strongest, fittest, healthiest, and happiest. So have an amazing, beautiful week. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it on social media, Facebook, Instagram. Tag me. I'm at RoccoFit on Instagram, ROCOFIT. If you have a moment, I would so appreciate a review on iTunes. It really means the world, and it makes such a difference to getting this podcast out there. So thank you so much. Have a beautiful one.
Thank you so much for listening in today. I know time is precious, and I'm grateful you shared yours with me. It would mean the world to me if you felt an impact, a moment of inspiration, or learned something new. If you would share it with those you care about and leave me a review on iTunes. I'd love to know what spoke to you or what you'd like to hear more of. Your sharing and leaving a review would help so much on this journey to making an impact on as many people as possible. It's worth it. I know from experience, there are moments when something we hear has the possibility of changing everything.